Good morning, everyone. You are listening to Red Sea Roundup, and I am your host for the day, Pam Marvin. I am so glad to be back home. I've been visiting my daughter out in Louisiana, really awesome, cool place, and very Catholic where she is. We got to walk to church on Sunday. It was so cool. Loved it. Thank you for joining us way out there in Waco, not so far, just our neighbor down the street, and then in Palestine as well. Thank you for joining us today. And today, my guest is from the Catholic Men Show. Adam, remind me your last name. Minihan. I saw Adam and your cohort.
Yes, David Niles.
Niles, a couple years ago at our benefit dinner. They were awesome. They're such like-minded men of heart as we are here in the Brazos Valley as well. So I'm so glad to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, so go ahead, Adam, and give us your little bio yourself, like those things that are most important to you. Like, okay, this is me.
Okay, I'm a son of God. I am a husband to a beautiful red-headed woman named Haley. We have 5 children: Luke, Jude, Anna, Leo, and John, ranging from 10 years old all the way down to 6 months old.
Wow.
I've born and raised in Oklahoma, went to Oklahoma State, Cowboys, tough year, it looks like, for the football team, but we'll persevere, hopefully.
Those Aggies, whew.
Yeah, it looks like it could be a trying year, but that's all right. We'll sally forth. And I'm the communications director for the Diocese of Tulsa in Eastern Oklahoma. I am the CEO of St. Michael Radio here in Tulsa and co-host of the Catholic Man Show. And we wrote a book for Ascension Press called Living Beyond Sunday, Making Your Home a Holy Place. It was like me and my wife and David and his wife. We kind of came together and wrote a book on like how to live the faith, how to like what does it really look like outside of Sunday? Like, you know, if we're truly Catholic, it's not a 1 hour per week kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like in our DNA. It's like who we are. It's who we identify as is like the son or daughter of God, you know? And so like, if that's the case, how do we do that? Like, what does it look like? And so that's what we wrote about in the book. And other than that, I enjoy a nice scotch every once in a while. And I enjoy great books, and I love just all things Catholic.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I'm glad you started bringing up just a little bit, even more of your background that I want to go into more of. And that is how you got into all this radio stuff. You know, I mean, did you start out as the communications director and then kind of go from there? Or is it the other way around?
Yeah, it's actually the other way around. Pam, I had no plans on starting a Catholic radio station. I was just minding my own business. And
that sounds familiar here at Red Sea Radio.
Yeah.
Sounds like a bit of Dennis's story as well.
Yeah. In fact, I'm a big fan of Dennis. Dennis, shout out to him and all the guys at Red Sea Radio, because you guys really helped us kind of get off the ground. So really what happened is Dave and I we've been best friends since we were 5 years old. We grew up together. Our families grew up together. Mom and dads are all best friends. We all went to the same parish together, same schools, all these kind of things. And we were just hanging out after college one day, and Dave receives an email at 9 p.m. It says, "I have a crazy idea for a radio station, but you have to call me tonight if we're going to pull this off. Jeff." That's all the email said. Now, Dave and I just got out of college, and we thought what he wanted was money. And the thing about us at the time being, you know, right out of college, we didn't have money, you know, like that wasn't one of the things about us, you know? And so Dave was like, "I'm not going to call him." And I said, no, just call him, see what he wants. Let's try to figure it out. Well, it turns out that we were like the bottom of the barrel. He's scraping to try to find somebody to start a radio station and to incorporate themselves and fill out the paperwork by midnight that night. So it's 9 p.m. We have to have all the paperwork done by midnight that night. We incorporate ourselves. We are trying to fill out the paperwork. The thing about filling out paperwork with the FCC is like, if you don't fill it out correctly, they just scrap it. Like you don't get another chance. Like it's not like an opportunity, like to get a redo. And so we're over there, we're trying to figure it out. Like this is legal jargon. We don't really even understand what we're filling out, right? It's kind of like A, B, C, D, A, B, C. You know, you're kind of like back in college whenever you're just kind of randomly guessing, trying to figure out what your answers are. We're just trying to figure it out. We're about to submit the paperwork, it's 11:45. The website crashes. It gives us another day to fill it out. The deadline gets extended another day. We get to the lawyers. Turns out we didn't have it filled out correctly. Shocker. But we got to figure it out and fill it out correctly. We started we got the opportunity to start the radio station. We raised money. And then all of a sudden we went from a low power frequency station to now we reach over 1.2 million people every day.
Amazing. What a great story. I love it that you're best friends and the families are best friends. I would love to cultivate more of that in our societies today, in our cultures. And that's a beautiful thing. Well,
yeah. Okay. It seems like it's not very common these days. And I don't know if it's because it's like a stability thing. You know, the Benedictines, they take a vow of stability and they're like, hey, this is where we are and we're not moving and this is where we're going. You know, we're not going anywhere.
Well, you know, one thing I can say for myself, and I've seen this with my kids too, it's like after high school or college, these really great friends that were very bonded are living in different cities now. But it sounds like y'all went to the same college and ended up living in the same town. That's not as common. Like my best friends, I moved away. And they moved away. I've seen that a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just interesting, you know. It's hard to keep a relationship going when you guys are so far away. Still doable, but tough to do.
Right. Well, I want you to tell me the story about how you met Dennis and is it at the ordination of our favorite son, Bishop Conderla?
Yeah. So we had just started, the Catholic radio station not too long before this. And we're like, oh, we're getting a new bishop. This is going to be awesome. We should air it live on air. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do. So we called Dennis, or Dennis calls us maybe. And he's like, we can do it. We got the equipment. We got all the equipment to do it. And I was like, good, because we don't know what we're doing. And so he comes up and you're like, we're going to give a play-by-play of the ordination. And little did I know, I thought, like in my mind, I thought, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be easy. And then as it was going, I realized how hard it was because there's, as you know, there's so many like quiet points in the mass. You know, there's a lot of like things that are like, so how do I tell it? It's like, and now they're processing down the aisle. You know, you're like a golf announcer almost, you know, trying to figure out like what's happening and giving a play-by-play while still being reverent. And anyway, it was very comical. I did not imagine it being so funny, but it was a great time. We did it with Thaddeus and Dennis, and it was a lot of fun.
That's amazing. So, okay, so here we are. We've already started the Catholic Man Show. You guys, did you jump right into that right away? Did you start out with something else? How did that happen?
No, I mean, it was basically, we had started the radio station and a couple years in, we were like, you know what, we should start we stream a lot of EWTN content, and mainly EWTN content, but we wanted to have local programming as well, because that's how you get local people to tune in, right? You got to have local programming. And so Dave and I are like, well, we own it. We can just start our own show, and we don't have to ask for permission. We can just do it. Mm-hmm. So at the time we had started some men's groups, and the men's groups were ordered towards like coming together, enjoying a glass of scotch, enjoying a cigar, and talking about Jesus, talking about our faith. And it was really doing well. We were like, the groups were getting so big that we were having to splinter them off, and we were starting all these different men's groups.
Were they like home groups kind of things?
Yeah, they were just at home. They were like, it was very simple, right? It's just like guys coming together and saying, hey, we're gonna have either a beer or a whiskey. And we're just going to sit here and talk about our Catholic faith, talk about different virtues, talk about fatherhood, talk about, just whatever's on our mind. And it really resonated with men. And I think for several reasons, right? I think a lot of men are lonely. A lot of men don't understand what it means to have like authentic friendship rooted in Jesus Christ. They don't have the opportunity to really have meaningful conversations anymore. You have a lot of surface level conversations, but you don't have something that's really meaningful that like hits you at the heart. And so when we started doing it, it was just doing very well. Like it was just growing. And so I was like, what if we just modeled that idea into a radio show? And so originally the Catholic Man Show was really originally supposed to be just a local Catholic radio program. And at the time there wasn't a whole lot of podcasts out there. Now there's tons of great content, right? So we threw it up as a podcast as well. And now I think we're syndicated on 23 or 24 different Catholic radio stations.
Oh, amen. That's awesome.
Podcasts. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds really wonderful. And okay, so the topics, one of my favorites of your topics when you came and spoke a couple years ago, were about the practicality at home, like you were saying. The book kind of sprung from that, but it's the fatherhood, the prayer life, family. So, but the virtues is really where you started, like, really touching my heart and cracking open just a new way of looking at things. So you've been doing the podcast for a while, and is it that point that Living Beyond Sunday, the book, was born from a lot of those conversations?
Yeah, I think so. I think, when we went and started talking at different conferences, different places, it just seemed like men were trying to figure out, like, okay, they'd buy in, right? They were like, okay, I want to live my Catholic faith. Like, I believe that Jesus is our Lord and Savior. I believe in the Eucharist. I believe the tenets of our faith. I just don't know how to do that in the home. Like, I don't know how to pass that on to my children. I just don't know, like, now that I've committed, what do I do? And so one of the things that we wanted to do was like, well, let's just give some easy practical tips on how to live our faith in the home. And we obviously wanted, a feminine perspective from that as well. So our wives are actually the ones who really have all of our best ideas. We joke that everything good that comes from our show is really like them either pushing us or like asking us questions or just living. They're both our wives are very strong, holy Catholic women that, is the heart of the home. And so we want to have them participate in this book to kind of give both sides. And that's kind of how it started.
Okay. Well, now you've kind of teased us a little bit. I don't want to give away the content of the book entirely, but you said easy steps. So I'd love to give our listeners a really practical, easy step that they could take home today.
Sure. So let's talk about maybe prayer, because I think that's kind of something that, has to be at the root of in the family, right? Is that the family has to pray together. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can be a little intimidating. Sometimes that can be a little awkward, especially for a man who maybe doesn't have his own prayer life, or maybe just starting his prayer life. He doesn't know exactly what to do. He feels a little discomfort there. And like, I know I'm supposed to be the leader, but maybe I'm not articulating this well, or I don't know how to really pray very well. And kids are really good at knowing whether or not, I'm faking it or if this is genuine. And so, there's a lot of, kind of anxiety maybe in the home of if you're starting to try to be a leader in spiritual leader in the home, but it's not as difficult as what you think mentally, right? And the awkwardness, a lot of times is just interiorly, it doesn't come off near as awkward as what you think it does, right? So a lot of things is just like, how do you live? How do you pray? How do you love? Well, you do it. You start.
Even if it's messy.
Even if it's messy, right? And so obviously the easy ones are at dinner time. The easy ones are also, so let me give you an example. Like as we get into the car to go to Holy Mass on Sundays, right? If any family out there is listening right now, they know that Lionel Richie's song "Easy Like Sunday Morning" was not written about Catholic families because the toughest time for a Catholic family is like Sunday mornings as you're trying to get ready, trying to make sure, do you have your shoes on? Why is your hair already messed up? We just fixed your hair. Where's your belt? All these different things. Like,
why do you have food on your face and in your hair?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how did this happen? I was away for 3 seconds. There's all this chaos, right? And it's really hard to go from this chaotic mode of get in the van, we're running late, hurry up, to the time of like the pinnacle moment in the week, right? This is the foundation of the faith. What is Christian culture? It's essentially the Mass. This is what Christian culture really is. And so how do we like prepare ourselves for Mass? Well, on the way to Mass, every one of our family members, we say out loud, Dad is offering up Mass for the intention of whatever it would be. Like, so Dad's offering up the intention for his business meeting on next Wednesday through St. Joseph. Mom gives her intention, the other kids give their intentions. And so what does it do? But it gives them the opportunity to really reflect on something that they can pray for and offer up to our Lord in the Mass. But then also you have a great insight in what's going on in your children's head, maybe what they're struggling with and what you can actually pray for them specifically, right? So if Luke, my son, is really struggling with being kind or patient, and that's what he wants to pray for, well, me as a father, I have this now insight to my son of who he realizes that this is a kind of a weakness of his. And as a father, I can pray for my son to develop this virtue, to grow in this virtue, which I think is really important, right? So there's so many different things to do. Another thing, a great example is in the morning time. True or false? Our Lord is outside of space and time.
True.
Absolutely. So like he doesn't need, like we don't have to actually be in the chapel to genuflect towards the tabernacle. Right? So when we wake up in the morning, you can actually tell your kids, hey, in the morning, the first thing we do is we genuflect towards the tabernacle. Now the tabernacle may be, whichever way it is in the home, but you can like just reverence the Eucharist, even though you're, not physically there, but the Lord doesn't need you to be physically there to reverence him.
That's right.
He's outside of this. Right. So these are just really little things that we can do. Like as you pass the cemetery, you pray for the poor souls in purgatory that may be in that cemetery. You hear an ambulance, you pray, offer up for the first responders or the people who they're going to visit. There's just like things that I think that we should do that we do ordinarily all the time during the day. And we should just incorporate prayer into those. That's the easiest, most organic way to grow in our prayer life is to just do what we're doing every day, but incorporate prayer into it.
Right. I can remember when my children were young and we still had the Planned Parenthood here in Bryan, we'd say Hail Mary every time we passed it. And that really made an impression on them now that they're adults too. And now that it's gone, praise be Jesus. But.
Yeah, and Pam, what does this do? But you're actually developing the prayer life for your children, right? Prayer is a habit. And so if you continually going back to this and getting them in the habit of praying, it has a huge impact even later in life, right? Like you just said, it has a big impact in your kids. Why? Because you were developing that habit when they were little and you said, this is important to us as a family. And then they can reflect on that and say like, oh, well, that may be something that should be important to me and my family now.
Okay. Some of the most difficult ones, like evening prayer wasn't so hard. Like if I would pray individually with my kids, I know some people do it is in a community, like the whole family. Maybe it's the rosary sometimes, which I know is really messy with little kids. But that I really think there's something really beautiful about the family sitting around and doing a communal prayer at the end of the day, especially, when they're really small. There's, not a whole lot that you can do. But do you have some suggestions for that? Or
oh man, you're teeing me up. This is like I'm getting all excited because this is the topics that I love to talk about. Okay, so two things. Yeah, so two things that come to mind. If you're trying to pray the rosary with the family and their young kids, those big wall rosaries, those rosaries that you see that are really massive that are hung up on the wall. So take that down, and whoever is leading the decade of the rosary, they get to hold the big rosary. Now, this really has an impact on the young kids, right? Because it gives them like a sense of, okay, now I'm the leader, now I'm the one, and like I get to have the big rosary. It's just a small thing. It's really interesting how if you incorporate tangible things, the smells and the bells, so to speak, if you have fire, especially like with little boys, like you incorporate fire like candles or incense or something small like that, and you give them, everybody has a duty, right? So Luke, you're in charge of lighting the candle. Jude, you're in charge of blowing the candle out. You're in charge of going to get the rosaries for everybody. Like you give them all duties, and then they get to be a part of it, and they feel like, okay, this isn't just a dad thing. This isn't just a mom thing. This is a family thing. So there's one thing. I love that.
Wonderful.
I love being able to incorporate all these different things. The beauty of it is that the church has given this to us so that we can succeed, so that we can grow in holiness and virtue. And so we should utilize these sacramentals. Another thing that we did was, this has kind of fallen out of favor or out of practice, but everybody prays before meals, but we used to also pray after meals.
Yes.
Like that was something that we concluded from your meal, and everybody was excused after prayer. Well, one thing I did was I realized as the father, like, the catechism says that the parents are the primary educators of the family, right? And so I was like, well, how do I continue educating my children? Well, they're there at the table. I have them captivated. They can't go anywhere. We're all eating. So this is an opportunity for me, right? And so I got really crazy, Pam. I put I got my wife approved beforehand. I didn't go crazy before asking her, but I put dry erase boards in my kitchen walls. And as they're sitting there eating, I'm either teaching them something from the Baltimore Catechism, which is super easy to do because you don't have to like know anything. It's already in question and answer format. And it's a beautiful way to teach your kids the faith. So we have a knowledge board, which is a dry erase board. Then we have a prayer board, which is another dry erase board. Now the prayer board has all of our names, all in spots for intentions and spots for them to ask for different saints for their intercession. So at the end of our meal, everybody stands up, pushes in our chair. Everybody says one intention through one saint, and we go through it all. And what does this do? But it teaches them again to think about the things in which they want to pray for, the different saints, the beauty of asking for the intercession of the saints. And then also they eat at that table more than once a day. And so as they come and sit down for breakfast the next morning, they see, oh yeah, Dad is praying for this business meeting. I should pray for him. Or, oh yeah, Mom is really wanting us to do well in growing in patience. I'm going to really work on that today. So it's just another reminder, but it concludes the meal for us as a family to pray together and to know what everybody's praying for, and gives us an opportunity to teach them about the saints.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I'm assuming you're homeschooling your children.
So this year we've been homeschooling up until this year. So there's a classical school here in Tulsa, the Holy Family Classical School, that is just doing phenomenal work, and they just switched over to the classical model about 2 years ago. And it's just growing like crazy. And really it seems to be mainly homeschooling families that realize that this is a really good opportunity for them. So they just now started going to school this year, but that doesn't stop us. Even if you have kids that go to school, that doesn't stop you. You're still the primary educator of your children, right? And so
absolutely,
we still have to take that role seriously as husbands, fathers, wives, and mothers.
That's wonderful. I'm really enjoying getting to talk to you. So now my thoughts are going towards like the different types of apostolates that have sprung from your ministry of this podcast / radio show that is a Catholic Man show. And I want to hear more how that kind of developed. Like you spoke a little bit about the camp out. So there's the camp out. And of course, do you still have the men's groups that you were doing, like the little home groups as well? So let's talk about some of these fruits that have born from the show.
Sure. Yeah. So we still do the men's groups. We have several. Now, Dave and I can't go to all of them anymore because there's just so many different ones that have kind of grown. So we want to make sure that they're grown, they're mature, and then we let them go and take that. Yeah. But Dave and I are still a part of at least 3 groups that meet. One meets weekly, and then the other 2 meet monthly. So that's plenty for us to be able to handle. But yeah, we have the camp out. Now this is very interesting because I think men really want to be able to have tangible like experiences. We live in this techne world where a lot of men, including myself, sit in front of a computer almost all day, and they end their day and they're like, I can't really put a finger on like what exactly I did today. Like I did a lot of great things, but if you said like, hey, can you show me, can you hand me the thing that you did today? It's like, I can't do that, right? It's not tangible. I say this because when we started the camp out, we thought it was just going to be something that was going to be small, couple guys getting together, praying, feasting, and like hanging out together. This is the 7th year that we're doing it. And last year there was 65 guys, 13 different states represented. A guy flew in all the way from Alaska to come to this thing. We host it at Clear Creek Abbey, which is a Benedictine monastery. They have like 1,200 acres, or I don't know exactly. They have a lot of acreage, and they allow us to camp on their land. And so we camp out there. We host cigar rolling classes, forging classes, axe throwing, whiskey tasting, all these different things. But it's just like, we have a campfire at night. We have Irish music, at night that's, played with guitars and fiddles and everything else. And it's like, it's just real. It's realism at its max, right? And so I think this is what really is attractive to a lot of men, is that like we have the opportunity to go and pray the Liturgy of the Hours with the monks. And then we get a chance to come out here and, learn how to forge. And then we get a chance to go out and like, play cornhole together. Yeah. I mean, it's just a lot of fun. And we cook all the meals for them, and we provide the beer for them as well. And so it's just grown so much. It's the last weekend. So it's September 28th, 29th, 30th, and October 1st.
Wow.
There's still actually like 2 or 3 spots left. So if you want to go to thecatholicmanshow.com, you can sign up. But it's just a great time because it's authentic friendship.
Yeah.
It's learning to, enjoy the finer things in life, but in moderation. It's the opportunity to grow in your spiritual life with prayer and mass every day.
Amazing.
It's just I love it.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of stuck on the food. You said you feed everybody. I'm imagining cooking outdoors. Is that the case, or do you use the Abbey's kitchen or something like that?
No, we don't use their kitchen. No. So this has grown over the first time. We were like, oh yeah, we can do it. And then we realized how hard it was, right? Because like if you're feeding 65 guys, that's a lot of food.
Yeah.
So we've kind of grown it over the years, and since this is our 7th year, we're kind of going all out. So like on Fridays, because there's no meat on Fridays, is that we have a huge fish fry, and so we have huge, massive pots of oil with fish and hush puppies and things like that. So it's a fish fry on Friday night, and then we have big smokers that we smoke pork and have barbecue on Saturday. And then, so we try to do as much meal prepping ahead of time, but, we have, it seems to work out. What we do is we ask every man to sign up for one prep meal and one cleanup meal. And so like, this is a community thing. Like we're all going to do this together. And so every man, signs up for prepping, and every man signs up for, cleaning up, and a lot of hands make light work.
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorites, which is, a long time ago, why it was so fruitful to have so many children too. Well, many hands.
That's right. That's right.
And it should be today too, to put them back to work. Okay. Off air, we were talking about something I really want to kind of get into, because gosh, we only have about little less than 15 minutes left in the show. But again, I was really attracted to your talk at the benefit a couple years ago, because you really said the cornerstone of growing in holiness was living a life of virtue. And that's one of my little wheelhouses too. I'm really there with you. And I have focused obviously a lot on the female side, the feminine side, and know like a lot of what I can say those too, but I really want to get into more of these virtues that use this masculine side, because again, just reiterating what you said, there's just not a lot out there. I think because men are primarily, since they are these leaders, but they're also a little reserved. That vulnerability is, kind of say the word for me, Caleb.
Juxtaposition.
Yeah. Juxtaposition, right? Yeah. About, you're these strong masculine men, but then you're vulnerable at the same time, which is a true leader. So I really like to kind of pick your brain and let you give me kind of some really feedback on these masculine hearts and the type of virtues. Maybe it's I always say we have these what we call thermometers in a way that indicate we need to work on a virtue. For instance, maybe impatience or anger and things like that. But I really would love to hear your perspective from the masculine heart and the fatherhood heart about what does growth and virtue look like to you?
Sure. So what instantly comes to mind are the 4 cardinal virtues, right? Prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance, which you can teach your kids this way. This by peanut butter jelly French toast. Prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance. This is just my dad and me always trying to figure out ways in which I can teach my kids easy ways to remember things. But so they say that prudence is the mother of all virtues, because that is what flows, and you're able to decipher what is good and how to act based on prudence. So that's the main thing. But I think, though, in today's world, a lot of men struggle, obviously, with temperance and fortitude. I think those are the two that are the ones that are against us in today's world, right? Because temperance is being able to, if you can't deny yourself, how are you supposed to be able to protect your wife or your children, right? If you can't say no to yourself, you can't say no to any kind of temptation. So I think temperance is something that is different or difficult in today's world because they're always pushing either completely excess or completely nothing. Right. They say like sex, all, go all out on sex, or like, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat, whatever it is, it's just like a complete void and absence or a complete excess. Yeah. And temperance is saying like, no, there's finer things in life when you use it in moderation. Right.
Yeah, the temperance at first when you were speaking came to mind was the use of social media. I mean, I don't know how you regulate your kids with that, but I know just as an adult, all of us need more of a temperance in that, like to almost its non-existence. Wishing I could figure out a way to really be still in the world, but not of it when it comes to technology. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And this is something that I didn't realize how addicted I was to my cell phone until I went on Exodus 90. I did Exodus 90 for the first time about 3 years ago. And I highly recommend all men do Exodus 90. If you have not done it before, they start in January, like the big push is the beginning of January. So it's the beginning of the year. But Exodus 90 is huge. And it really shows you like the things in which you don't think are an issue or things that you don't think you have an attachment to, they uncover that. And they say, like, oh, no, you do.
So give just a little bit more background about Exodus 90s for our listeners that may not know what it is.
Sure. So go to exodus90.com first and foremost. That'll give you an opportunity to kind of learn more about it. But it's really based on 3 pillars. It's prayer, asceticism, and fraternity, this is what every man should be focused on, right? Prayer, your relationship with God and in His church. Asceticism, being able to deny yourself so that way you can give yourself more to others, and that we need each other in order to do these things. That Christ sent out 2 by 2. He didn't send them out individually because we're made for communion. We're made to grow together. And so if we're not growing together, if we're not pursuing holiness together, it's going to be very, very difficult. And so those 3 pillars are what Exodus 90 really encapsulates and shows like, hey, we're men in this world, but not of this world. We're called to friendship. We're called to fellowship, but we're also called to our end, which is namely being with God forever and eternity. Mm-hmm.
And so that's the Exodus 90 part. And you did say that you discovered a lot about your use of technology. How are you different today because of it?
Well, I'm much more intentional. I think being as you're trying to strive for virtue, as you're trying to strive, to live a Catholic life, most of it, like almost all of it, it just is being intentional, right? Like, what am I doing throughout the day? I don't go to my garage and pick up a hammer and then go look around for things to hit with that hammer, right? Like if I have a nail that is in, that I'm trying to hang up a picture in my home, then I will go out, grab my hammer and use the hammer to nail in to hang up my picture. Well, the same thing is true for social media, right? I think that if you're using social media in a way in which you're intentional and saying like, no, I'm going to do this to maybe spread the gospel or to show, the pictures of my family to other family members who are not living close, like these are good things, right? But if you're just on social media to be on social media, to waste time on social media, that's not a good use of your time. That's not a good use of social media. And so being intentional about it will really help regulate how often you use it.
Yeah, I heard a really great phrase from the guys over at Mark Barnes and the guys over at New Polity saying that the use of social media can both simultaneously relieve anxiety when you're in awkward situations and then produce anxiety. So it has that both. And I thought that was very insightful. But it does. Right, I mean, like after 2 minutes, I've got the anxiety going on. I'm like, oh, I don't like this.
Right. And the social media platforms, they know this, right? It's made to get you in the habit of doing this. Like they're trying to make it addictive so that way you come back and come back and come back.
The dopamine hits.
Right. Exactly.
So another way. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead.
Please. You're the guest.
I was just saying this kind of just dovetails in what we were talking about being temperate, right? Like this is the importance of being able to say no to certain things. And so I'm not going to look at my phone right now. I'm going to just look at Pam as we sit here and talk and have a real conversation and not like even when it gets uncomfortable or awkward, I'm not going to go to my phone. I'm going to like just be in his presence. This is what the saints were so good at, right? When you talk to people who knew John Paul II or Mother Teresa, what do they say? They said, like, when they talked to me, I felt like I was the only person in this world that he was talking to. And it's because, like, they were so engaged and intentional and seeing that person for who they truly were, namely, it made in the image and likeness of God. So they're giving you the opportunity to see God in a new way through this person. And they're just intentional about it. And so we have to be able to be temperate with the different things in our lives and say no to certain things so we can say yes to greater goods.
That's right. So what do you do for entertainment? What's the family entertainment look like? I think we have to rethink all of that as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. So so technology can play a role, right? You can have a family movie night. That's great. But that doesn't mean that every night we're going to sit in front of the TV and sit there and try to mindlessly look for something to watch, right? In our book, we actually talk about the importance of setting up your home and being intentional about how you set up your home and what it really says. So, like, if everything is pointed towards the TV,
yes,
what is that really saying about the living room?
Right.
And so, family entertainment does look a little different, but it makes it a lot more fun because you're more active, you're more engaged in each other's lives, and you're not stuck behind a screen. Yeah,
family game night. That's one of my favorites. And now adult children come in, they love it. It's the first thing they go to. It's like, let's play a game. Love it. Yeah. But
those are memories that you're creating, right? These are things that you talk about forever, and it's building up the family or building up a friendship. So they're very, very important.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I wanted to kind of circle back a little bit to how people can find the Catholic Man Show. It would be like if you wanted to stream it here in Texas, how would we stream it?
Well, you can listen on Red Sea Catholic Radio at 11 a.m. on Thursdays.
Okay.
Nice. Yes. Yeah,
Thursdays?
That's great. Yeah. So I highly recommend doing that first. If you're in at work or something like that and you can't, you can podcast us if you just look up the Catholic Man Show. Every episode we start out with a drink. We just start out opening and talking about either a whiskey or a beer of some sort. And we don't do this.
You have a favorite whiskey?
Yeah, I mean, what's your favorite whiskey? And I mean, we don't do this just for drinking for its sake, right? Like, we don't do it just to like say, oh, this is what we like to do. But we actually do this also to show that you can have a drink and be moderate and have a good conversation, right? Like that drinking is involved that can facilitate good conversations, but it's not there to abuse. So, and then we just talk about either fatherhood or what's going on in our lives and virtue and Catholicism and all things, that are going on. So,
do you do
CatholicManShow.com.
CatholicManShow.com and the camp out. You can find out more about that at the campout.com too.
I think if you Google Catholic Man Show camp out, it's the first thing that hits.
Okay. So if someone is just being first introduced to this kind of this new way of thinking outside of the box about the Catholic family and everything like that, and the prayer life. I love that we said, just start. It can be messy. I love that. I love the suggestions you made about the rosary in the home. I thought that was wonderful. Perhaps there's a gentleman listening now, a dad who really wants to be a better leader of his home, but yet maybe he has the wife is so good at it that he kind of falls back on that. What would you say to someone like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
common.
Very, very, very common, right? And so I think the first thing you have to do is you have to have your own prayer life. You can't give what you don't have. So if you don't have your own personal prayer life, if you're not offering up time every single day and praying for your wife and your children every single day, it's going to be very hard to really have a prayer life with the family. So start there and then start praying with your wife every night.
Yes.
Just make it a thing. Before we get into bed, we're going to pray together. And then that just naturally, as you develop this habit, it naturally becomes more comfortable. It's just the same way with lifting weights or anything else, right? The first couple times, it's tough. It hurts. It's hard. It's not easy. Yes. But the 8th time that you do it, the 10th time that you do it, this is coming more natural. This is a little bit easier now. Right. It's the same way with prayer life. So just, you got to suck it up. You got to have a little bit of fortitude and just say nope, this is the way God wants it to be. I'm the leader of this family, the spiritual leader of the family. And in communion with my wife, we're going to lead our children to heaven and hopefully populate heaven with all of our children.
That's right. That reminds me so sweetly that my daughter using a really great analogy about the need of practice with her 4-year-old who, well, you remember when you started riding your bike and it was tough and it was hard and you fell and you scraped your knee, but you kept at it and you kept getting back up and riding that bike. And look at you today, you're really good at the bike, aren't you? And he's like, yeah, right. Well, that's the way it is with virtue. That's the way it is with learning and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. And we're made for the difficult, right? We're made to do the hard things. Like, this is why I think a lot of other people are really, doing well, like Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan or whoever these other men are, because they're calling men to greatness. Like, and we're made, to do the difficult. And we want to carry a cross. It's just, whose cross are you going to carry? Like, we're supposed to carry our own. We're supposed to have one for our family. Like, whose cross are you carrying? And so that's just something that you have to really think about, I think, and reflect on is whose cross am I carrying?
That's so true. I heard a really wise saying the other day that this is a good way to kind of wrap up the show. It's like you got to choose your hard, right? Yeah. It's hard if your kids drift away from the faith to watch them be away. So choose the heart of the dailiness, the repetition and prayer. Is there anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, I would say like persistence and being constant. Like, how's your prayer life? If you think about it and reflect on how is my prayer life, it should be constant.
Awesome.
Like, because there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. There's going to be times that you're going to feel like that, oh, God is just really speaking to me. And then there's going to be times where you're going to be like, is he even here? But it needs to be remaining constant. And so that would be my suggestion.
That's awesome. It's been such a pleasure having you today. Adam Minihan from The Catholic Man Show. Hopefully our paths will cross again in the near future. You've been a super fun guest. And I just encourage all of our listeners to tune in to the show. And thank you for listening. Until next time, go and love your neighbor.